The fire investigator told me that flames do not have a conscience, but families do. He was wrong. My name is Nia, and 3 days ago, I watched my entire life burn to the ground while my father complained that my emergency call might wake up my mother. I stood barefoot on the cold pavement, shivering in my silk pajamas, while everything I owned turned into black smoke against the night sky. But the real burn did not come from the fire. It came when the arson specialist showed me the security footage from across the street. It turns out the fire did not start by accident, and the person unlocking my front door 10 minutes before the explosion was not a stranger. Before I tell you how I sent my own brother-in-law to prison and exposed my parents as accomplices, please hit that subscribe button. If you have ever felt like the black sheep in a family of wolves, let me know in the comments. This is not just a story about survival. This is a story about justice. It was 2 in the morning when the smell of melting plastic dragged me out of a deep sleep. My eyes stung as I opened them to a room filled with thick gray smoke. The smoke detector was screaming a high-pitched rhythm that vibrated in my teeth. I rolled out of bed and hit the floor crawling because the air was cleaner down there. The heat was already a physical weight pressing against my back. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. That was it. No photo albums, no laptop, no jewelry box with my grandmother's sapphire necklace. Just my phone and the silk pajamas clinging to my sweating skin. I stumbled into the hallway. The heat from the living room was so intense it singed the hair on my arms. I could hear the roar of the fire now. It sounded like a living beast devouring my furniture. I sprinted down 6 flights of stairs because the elevators were disabled. By the time I burst out of the front lobby door and onto the street, I was gasping for air, my lungs burning as if I had swallowed hot coals. The cool night air hit me like a slap. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder every second. I turned back to look up at my building. Flames were licking out of my living room window, dancing aggressively against the brick facade. That was my sanctuary. That was the first place I had ever bought with my own money. As a forensic auditor, I spent my life looking for missing numbers and hidden truths in financial records. I was precise. I was careful. I never left the stove on. I never left candles burning. This made no sense. Neighbors were gathering on the sidewalk, wrapping blankets around themselves and pointing up at my unit. I felt small. I felt incredibly exposed. I stood there shivering violently, not from the cold but from the shock. The adrenaline was starting to fade and the reality was settling in. I was homeless. I had nothing but a battery percentage of 40% and a contact list. Naturally, my thumb hovered over the contact for Dad. In any normal family, calling your parents when your house is burning down is a reflex. It is an instinct. You expect comfort. You expect a safe place to land. I pressed call. The ringing sound in my ear felt like it lasted for hours. Finally, the line clicked open. Otis here. Who is calling at this ungodly hour? His voice was thick with sleep and irritation. He did not sound worried. He sounded annoyed that his rest had been disturbed. Dad, it is Nia. My apartment. It is on fire, Dad. The whole building is evacuated. I am outside. I have nothing. There was a pause. I waited for the gasp. I waited for him to ask if I was hurt. I waited for the sound of him jumping out of bed to come get me. Instead, I heard a heavy sigh. The sound of a man who has been inconvenienced by a telemarketer. Nia, seriously. Do you know what time it is? It is 2:15 in the morning. Your mother finally got to sleep. She has had a migraine all day and took a strong sleeping pill. If I wake her up now because of your drama, she will be up for 3 days. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Behind me, the windows of my apartment shattered, blowing glass onto the street below. The crowd screamed, "Dad, did you hear me? My apartment is burning. I am barefoot on the sidewalk. I need a place to stay. I am coming home." No. The word was sharp, immediate, final. You are not coming here, Nia. We just had the guest room carpet cleaned. The Persian rug your mother loves. You are probably covered in soot and smelling like smoke. I am not having you track ash all over the house in the middle of the night. Besides, we have guests coming this weekend for the anniversary party. The house is full of boxes. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the night air. Dad, are you serious? I could have died. But you did not die, Nia. You are clearly fine enough to argue with me. Look, this is what happens when you are careless. You probably left that cheap iron on again. Or maybe it was those candles you insist on burning. You always were the messy one. Jasmine never has these problems. Her house is immaculate. He was comparing me to my sister while my life was literally going up in flames. Jasmine, the golden child, the influencer who lived in a house my parents helped pay for. I have nowhere to go, Dad. Please. Go to a hotel, Nia. You have that fancy job with the big salary, right? Use it. Do not come here and disturb your mother's peace. Call us tomorrow when you have cleaned yourself up. And do not expect us to pay for this mess. The line went dead. He hung up. He actually hung up. I stood there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. The firefighters were rushing past me now, dragging heavy hoses. The water hit the flames with a loud hiss, sending plumes of white steam into the air. I watched the water destroy what the fire had not touched. My books, my documents, my clothes, all of it soaking wet and charred. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was hot and angry. My father was worried about his Persian rug. He was worried about waking up Mom. He did not ask if I was burned. He did not ask if I had shoes. He just wanted to make sure I did not inconvenience him. I looked at my phone again. I had one more option. Jasmine, my younger sister. We had our differences. She was vain and self-absorbed and spent her life curating a fake reality on Instagram. But surely she would not leave me on the street. She had a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, a house I had helped her repaint last summer. I dialed her number. It rang 4 times. Then the call connected. But it was not Jasmine's voice. It was Kyle, my brother-in-law. The man who wore boat shoes and polo shirts and looked down on me because I worked for a living while he played at being a real estate mogul. Hello. Kyle, it is Nia. I am sorry to call so late. There was a fire. My apartment is gone. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked. I needed him to hear the desperation. I needed him to be a human being. A fire. Whoa, that is intense. Everyone okay? He sounded casual, detached, like I was telling him about a traffic jam. I am physically okay, but I have lost everything, Kyle. Dad won't let me come over. Can I crash on your sofa just for tonight? I just need a safe place to close my eyes. I will figure out a hotel in the morning. There was a shuffling sound on the other end. I heard a murmur in the background. It sounded like a woman voice. Jasmine. Is that Jasmine? Let me talk to her. Please, Kyle. Nah, she is out cold. Look, Nia, I do not think tonight is a good idea. Jasmine is... She is not feeling well. The pregnancy, you know. She needs her rest. Jasmine was not pregnant. She had told me last week she was on birth control because a baby would ruin her figure for swimsuit season. He was lying. Kyle, she is not pregnant. Just let me come over. I will sleep on the floor. I do not care. I am scared, Kyle. His tone shifted. It went from casual to cold. The mask dropped. Look, Nia, we do not want your drama here, okay? Bad things always seem to happen to you. Fires, breakups, issues. It is like a dark cloud follows you around. We are trying to maintain a positive vibe in this house. Positive energy only. If you come over here smelling like tragedy, it is going to upset Jasmine. And frankly, I do not want to deal with it. He called my trauma a vibe killer. He called my tragedy an inconvenience to his positive energy. You are kidding me. Kyle, I am family. You are Jasmine family, Nia. Not mine. And right now, my priority is my wife. There is a Walmart down on Route 9. Their parking lot is safe. Go buy some new clothes and sleep in your car if you have to. You are a smart girl. You always brag about how independent you are. So be independent. Click. Second rejection. Second dial tone. I lowered the phone. The screen was blurry because my eyes were full of tears. But these were not tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. I looked around at the chaos. The red lights of the fire trucks painted the street in blood and danger. A paramedic approached me asking if I needed oxygen. I shook my head. I did not need oxygen. I needed a plan. I walked 3 blocks to where my car was parked. Thankfully, I had parked on the street and not in the building garage. I used the emergency key I kept magnetized under the bumper because my car keys were melted in the apartment. I climbed into the back seat of my sedan. The leather was cold. I curled up into a ball, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to preserve body heat. I could still see the smoke rising from my building in the distance. It looked like a funeral pyre. I lay there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the city. My stomach growled, but I ignored it. I replayed the conversations in my head. Do not track Ash on the rug. You are a vibe killer. Go sleep in your car. They thought I was weak. They thought I was just the quiet, reliable Nia, who would cry for a few days and then apologize for bothering them. They thought this fire would break me. I closed my eyes and visualized the flames. But instead of fear, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The fire had burned away my apartment, yes, but it had also burned away the fog. I saw them clearly now. For the first time in 32 years, I saw them for exactly what they were: narcissists, liars, cowards. I did not know it then, but lying in that cold car in the Walmart parking lot was the most dangerous moment of my life for them. Because the Nia who woke up the next morning was not the daughter who wanted their approval. She was the auditor who was going to check their books. And I was going to find every single error. I drifted into a restless sleep, vowing that when I rose from these ashes, I would not be the only one who got burned. Little did I know the matches were already in my hands. I just needed to find the fuse. And that fuse would appear 3 days later in the form of a fire investigator named Miller and a security tape that would change everything. 2 days later, I stood on the porch of my childhood home. My clothes were cheap replacements I had bought from Walmart, and I still smelled faintly of smoke. No matter how many times I scrubbed my skin, the scent of ash seemed to seep from my pores. I rang the doorbell. I did not have a key anymore because my purse had melted on my kitchen counter. It took 3 minutes for my mother Clara to open the door. She did not hug me. She did not usher me inside with a warm blanket. She stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance, and wrinkled her nose as if she was smelling rotten milk. You look terrible, Nia. That was her greeting. Not "Are you okay?" Not "I am glad you are alive." Just a critique of my appearance. Can I come in, Mom? It is freezing out here. She sighed and stepped aside reluctantly. I walked into the foyer. The house smelled like lavender and expensive floor wax. It was a stark contrast to the toxic fumes I had been inhaling for 48 hours. I started to walk toward the living room, but she stopped me with a sharp hand gesture. Do not sit on the white sofa. You smell like a campfire. Sit on the wooden chair by the window. And tell me honestly, did the neighbors see the police talking to you? I sat on the hard wooden chair, my hands trembling in my lap. Yes, Mom, the police were there. It was a major fire. The whole building was evacuated. Of course people saw. Clara paced back and forth, wringing her hands. This is a disaster. The Hendersons down the street are already jealous of our renovation. If they hear our daughter is homeless and dealing with the police, they will have a field day. Did you tell the officers who your father is? Please tell me you did not drag our name into your mess. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her makeup was flawless. Her pearls were perfectly aligned. She was more worried about the neighborhood gossip mill than the fact that her daughter had almost burned to death. I lost everything, Mom. Baby photos, my college diploma, Grandma's sapphire necklace. Everything is gone. Clara waved her hand dismissively. Things are replaceable, Nia. Reputation is not. And frankly, if you had been more careful like your sister, none of this would have happened. Jasmine never has these chaotic problems. She surrounds herself with success. You seem to attract misfortune. Speaking of the devil, the front door swung open, and a gust of wind announced the arrival of the golden couple. Jasmine walked in first, wearing a faux fur coat and oversized sunglasses, even though it was overcast. Kyle followed her, looking like he had stepped out of a catalog for yacht owners. He was wearing a polo shirt that was too tight, and a gold watch that caught the light aggressively. Hey, there she is. The fire starter. Kyle laughed at his own joke. He walked over to the fridge and grabbed a sparkling water without asking, ignoring me completely. Jasmine took off her sunglasses and looked me up and down with a smirk. Wow, Naya. That outfit is certainly a choice. Is that polyester? I hope it is flame retardant this time. She giggled and sat down on the pristine white sofa, the one I was forbidden to touch. Mom rushed over to her, fluffing a pillow behind her back. Are you comfortable, sweetheart? Can I get you anything? A snack? I am fine, Mom. Kyle and I just came from brunch. We are celebrating. Kyle just closed a huge deal. Well, he is about to close it. We are going to be rich. Like private jet rich. Kyle leaned against the counter, sipping his water. Yeah, it is a big one. Real estate tech. You wouldn't understand the details, Nia. It is high-level stuff. But hey, I heard about your little bonfire. Tough break. But look on the bright side. Now you can stop pretending you can afford that downtown lifestyle. I clenched my fists, my nails dug into my palms. I could afford it, Kyle. I have a job, a real job, unlike some people. Kyle's face hardened. The jovial bro mask slipped for a second. Watch your mouth, Nia. Just because you are bitter does not mean you can disrespect us. We came here to support the family, not to be insulted by a homeless person. Mom stepped in, immediately defending them. Nia, stop it. Kyle is right. You are being aggressive. They are tired. Jasmine needs her rest. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but my anger held me upright. I just need a place to stay for a few days, Mom. Just until the insurance check clears. I cannot keep sleeping in my car. It is not safe. Kyle laughed again. A cruel barking sound. Insurance check. Do not hold your breath. Investigations take months. And knowing you, there is probably some clause you missed. Look, Nia, take my advice. Go to a payday lender. Get a high-interest loan. Move into a motel. Do not mooch off Otis and Clara. They have done enough for you. They raised you. They do not owe you a retirement home at 32. Jasmine nodded in agreement, pulling her phone out to check her reflection. He is right, Nia. It is embarrassing. You are a grown woman begging for a bedroom. It is pathetic, really. Plus, we need the guest room for my wardrobe overflow. I have a photo shoot next week and I need space to organize my outfits. My wardrobe overflow. She was prioritizing her clothes over my shelter. I looked at Jasmine, ready to scream, ready to tell her exactly where she could shove her photo shoot. But then I saw it. She reached up to adjust the collar of her blouse. As she moved the fabric, a flash of deep blue light caught my eye. It was resting right in the hollow of her throat. A pendant. A large oval-cut sapphire surrounded by a halo of tiny vintage diamonds. My breath caught in my throat. The room seemed to tilt sideways. That was not just any necklace. That was Grandma Eleanor necklace. The one she had left specifically to me in her will because we shared the same birth month. The one I kept in a fireproof digital safe bolted to the floor of my bedroom closet. I stared at it. My brain was trying to process the impossible. My apartment was a pile of wet ash and rubble. The police had not even let me back in to salvage anything. The safe should still be there, buried under the debris. How was it around Jasmine's neck? There was only one explanation. One terrifying logical explanation. Someone had opened my safe before the fire started. My eyes snapped from the necklace to Kyle. He was watching me. He saw me looking at Jasmine's neck. For a split second, I saw panic in his eyes. He quickly looked away and cleared his throat loudly. All right, well, this has been fun, but the vibes are getting weird. Clara. We are going to head out. Nia is bringing everyone down. Jasmine stood up quickly, pulling her coat tight around her neck, covering the sapphire. Yeah, Mom. She is staring at me like a creep. It is making me uncomfortable. Mom turned to me, her face full of disappointment. Nia, you are upsetting your sister. I think it is best if you leave. But Mom, no buts. You are being hostile. Go figure out your own life. And do not come back until you can behave like a civilized human being. Mom walked to the front door and held it open. She was kicking me out. She was choosing the daughter who was wearing my stolen inheritance over the daughter who had almost died. I looked at Jasmine one last time. She was smiling a smug, victorious smile. She thought she had won. She thought I was just staring because I was jealous of her beauty. She had no idea that I had just seen the evidence that would destroy her life. I walked to the door. I did not argue. I did not scream. I did not point at the necklace and yell thief. Not yet. I was a forensic auditor. I knew that accusations were useless without proof. I needed more than just my eyes. I needed a paper trail. I needed a timeline. I stepped out onto the porch. Goodbye, Mom. Clara did not answer. She just shut the door. I heard the lock click. I walked to my car in the driveway. My hands were shaking, but not from cold anymore. They were shaking with adrenaline. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel. Kyle had panicked. That was the tell. He knew. I pulled out my phone. I did not call a hotel. I did not call a friend. I dialed the number on the business card the fire investigator had given me. Detective Miller, this is Nia. I need to see that security footage again, and I need you to check the timestamp. I think I know who unlocked my door. I started the engine. The car hummed to life. As I backed out of the driveway, I looked up at the house. I saw Jasmine and Kyle in the window laughing with my parents. They were toasting with champagne. Enjoy it, I whispered to the empty car. Enjoy the champagne, because it is the last drink you will ever have as free people. I drove away, leaving the house of hypocrites behind. I had no home. I had no clothes. But I had a lead. And for a woman like me, a lead was more valuable than a roof. The hunt was on. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my rental car outside a 24-hour diner, drinking black coffee and staring at the contact information for fire investigator Miller. The image of the sapphire necklace around my sister's neck burned in my mind brighter than the fire that took my home. I knew what I had seen. But in my line of work, knowing is not enough. You need proof. You need a chain of evidence that can stand up in a court of law. At 8 in the morning sharp, I walked into the fire department headquarters. It was a sterile building that smelled of floor wax and old paper. Investigator Miller was waiting for me. He was a man in his 50s with skin the color of deep mahogany and eyes that looked like they had seen every possible way a human being could destroy their own life. He did not smile when I walked in. He simply pointed to a metal chair across from his desk. Sit down, Ms. Vance. We have a lot to talk about. I sat. My hands were folded tightly in my lap. I was wearing the same cheap clothes from yesterday, but I held my head high. You found something, didn't you? Miller leaned back in his chair. The springs squeaked in the quiet office. He opened a manila folder on his desk and slid a series of photographs toward me. I looked down. The photos were gruesome. Charred beams, melted plastic, the skeletal remains of my sofa. And then a close-up of the floor near the living room curtains. Do you know what that is, Ms. Vance? I shook my head. It looks like a stain. It is a pore pattern. Miller said, his voice void of emotion. Accelerant. High-grade gasoline, to be specific. Someone poured it in a trail from your hallway to the curtains. This was not an electrical short. This was not a forgotten candle. This was arson. The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Arson. Someone had intentionally tried to erase my existence. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. But how did they get in? I have a heavy deadbolt. I have an alarm system. Miller pulled another sheet of paper from the file. It was a log from the security company. That is the interesting part. There was no forced entry. The front door was not kicked in. The lock was not picked. The intruder used a key. And as for the alarm system, it was not bypassed. It was disarmed. Manually. Someone punched in the 4-digit code at the keypad inside the door. I stopped breathing. The room suddenly felt very small. Disarmed. With a code. Yes. Miller looked me dead in the eye. That code was punched in at 1:45 in the morning, 15 minutes before the fire started. So I am going to ask you again, Ms. Vance, who has the key and who has the code? I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry as sand. The list was short. It was terrifyingly short. Me, I whispered. I have a key. Miller nodded. And who else? My parents. Otis and Clara. I gave them a spare key and the code 3 years ago, just for emergencies, in case I got locked out or had a medical issue. Anyone else? A boyfriend? A neighbor? A cleaning lady? No. Just my parents. Miller tapped his pen on the desk. So we have 3 suspects. You, your father, and your mother. Unless you are telling me you burned down your own apartment to collect insurance money. I looked at him shocked. No. Absolutely not. I am an auditor. I make good money. I loved that apartment. Miller held up a hand. I believe you. Mostly because I checked your financials this morning. You have a solid savings account and an excellent credit score. Arsonists usually do it for the money, and you do not need the money. Which brings us to the other option. Someone stole the key from your parents, or your parents gave it to them. My mind raced back to the conversation with my mother. I lost it, she had said. I lost the key. It was not lost. It was given. I have something else to show you, Miller said. He turned his computer monitor around. Your building security cameras were destroyed by the heat. But the bodega across the street has a camera pointing right at your entrance. The quality is poor. It was raining and the streetlights were flickering. But it caught something. He clicked play. I leaned forward, squinting at the grainy black and white footage. The timestamp read 1:40 a.m. The street was empty. Then a figure appeared from the shadows. It was a man. He was wearing a dark hoodie with the hood pulled up tight over his head, hiding his face. He wore baggy pants and gloves. He walked up to the front door of my building. I watched as he reached into his pocket, pulled out a key, and unlocked the main door without hesitation. He disappeared inside. My heart hammered against my ribs. Fast forward 15 minutes, Miller said, clicking the mouse. The video jumped to 1:55 a.m. The door opened again. The figure stepped out. But this time he was carrying a large duffel bag. It looked heavy. He threw it over his shoulder. He paused on the steps for a second, looking left and right. Then he started to run down the street. Wait, I said. Play that back. Miller rewound the video. Watch his legs, I said. The figure stepped down from the curb. As his left foot hit the pavement, his knee buckled slightly. He corrected himself, but there was a distinct rhythm to his run. Step, dip, step, dip. It was a favor. A limp. I knew that limp. I closed my eyes and the memory flooded back. 5 years ago, Thanksgiving football game in the backyard. Kyle, my sister's husband, went for a touchdown and twisted his knee in a gopher hole. He tore his meniscus. He refused to get surgery because he said he could heal it with positive thinking and ice baths. Ever since then, whenever it rained or the temperature dropped, he walked with that exact same hitch in his step. It was raining that night in the video, and it was cold. I opened my eyes. I looked at the screen. The height, the build, the arrogance of the walk even while limping. It is Kyle, I said. My voice was low but steady. Miller raised an eyebrow. Kyle. Who is Kyle? My brother-in-law. Jasmine's husband. Miller leaned forward, scribbling in his notebook. The real estate guy. I did a background check on your family tree. He has no criminal record. Why would he burn down your house? Money, I said. The word tasted like bile. He did not just burn it, he robbed it first. That bag on his shoulder, it is full of my things, my jewelry, my cash. I told Miller about the sapphire necklace I saw on Jasmine's neck. I told him about the safe. I told him about Kyle's fake Rolex and his desperate need to look rich. Miller listened intently. When I finished, he sat back and crossed his arms. It fits. The key, the code, the motive. But Ms. Vance, you need to understand something. A limp on a grainy video is compelling, but it is not a conviction. A defense attorney will tear this apart. They will say it could be anyone with a bad knee. They will say the necklace on your sister is just a coincidence or a duplicate. I know, I said. That is why I am not going to the police yet. Miller looked surprised. You are not? No. If I go to the police now, Kyle will lawyer up. My parents will lie to protect him. Jasmine will hide the necklace. They will close ranks, and I will be the crazy sister making accusations. I need more. I need a confession. Or I need undeniable proof that connects him to the crime. Miller studied me. For the first time, a hint of respect flickered in his eyes. You are thinking like an investigator. So what is your plan? I stood up. I smoothed the wrinkles on my cheap pants. I am going to catch them in their own greed. Kyle thinks he got away with it. He thinks I am stupid. He thinks I am helpless. I am going to use that against him. Miller stood up too. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a small business card. If you are going to play games with these people, be careful. A man who burns down a building does not have boundaries. If he finds out, you know he might come back to finish the job. I took the card. Let him try. He took my home, Mr. Miller. He took my past. But he gave me something too. He gave me a target. I walked out of that office into the bright morning sun. The air was fresh, but all I could smell was the gasoline on that video. Kyle had walked into my home, used my mother's key, entered my code, and set my life on fire. And my parents knew. They had to know. The key did not walk to Kyle by itself. I got back into my car and opened my laptop. It was time to do what I did best. I was going to audit Kyle's life. I was going to dig into every financial record, every credit card statement, every loan application I could find in the public database. If he did this for money, it meant he was desperate. And desperate men leave paper trails. I cracked my knuckles and started typing. The screen illuminated my face. The hunt for the numbers had begun, and the numbers never lie. The public library is the last place you would expect to find a woman who used to wear Italian silk suits and bill $500 an hour. But when your office is a pile of ash, and your laptop is melted plastic, you make do with what you have. I sat at a communal computer terminal in the back corner of the library. The air smelled of old paper and disinfectant. To my left, a teenager was playing video games. To my right, an elderly man was reading the newspaper with a magnifying glass. They had no idea that sitting between them was a forensic auditor about to dissect a man alive. I cracked my knuckles and logged into the public records database. Most people think financial secrets are kept in vaults. They are not. They are hidden in plain sight, buried under layers of bureaucracy and boring paperwork that no one bothers to read. But I read everything. I started with the basics. I typed in Kyle's full name and social security number, which I had memorized from a loan application I helped him fill out 3 years ago. The screen flickered, and then the data began to scroll. I felt a familiar rush of adrenaline. This was my domain. The numbers, the dates, the lies that people tell themselves, and the truth that the math reveals. Kyle always introduced himself as a real estate developer. He used words like portfolio and asset allocation at Thanksgiving dinner to make my father nod in approval. But the screen in front of me told a very different story. I pulled up the county clerk records first looking for property deeds. There were none. 0. Kyle did not own a portfolio of properties. He did not even own the duplex he claimed to be renovating on the west side. According to the deed transfer, that property was owned by a holding company based in Delaware that had absolutely no connection to him. He was just the property manager, a glorified landlord collecting rent for someone else while pretending to be the king of the castle. I dug deeper. I accessed the state business registry. Kyle had registered 4 limited liability companies in the last 2 years: Prestige Global, K-Town Ventures, Alpha Realty Group. The names were flashy, the financials were tragic. 3 of them had been dissolved by the state for failure to pay taxes. The fourth one, Alpha Realty Group, was active, but it was bleeding money. I pulled up the Uniform Commercial Code filings. These are public records that show when a creditor has a claim on your assets. The list was long. It was terrifyingly long. Kyle had taken out 3 distinct high-interest business loans in the last 6 months. These were not bank loans with reasonable rates. These were predatory loans from online lenders who charge 50% interest and break your kneecaps digitally if you miss a payment. Why did he need so much cash? I switched tabs to the civil court records, and there it was, the smoking gun. 6 months ago, Kyle was sued by the Mirage Casino in Atlantic City for an unpaid marker. A marker is essentially a line of credit a casino gives you so you can keep gambling when your cash runs out. Kyle had signed a marker for $50,000. He lost it all. He never paid it back. The court had issued a judgment against him, but he had ignored it. But $50,000 was manageable. It was a lot of money, but it was not burn down a building money. There had to be more. I kept scrolling. My eyes scanned the lines of data faster and faster. Then I saw the foreclosure notice. My heart stopped. The house. My sister's house. The 4-bedroom suburban dream home with the white picket fence and the marble countertops. The house where I had stood yesterday while they mocked me for being homeless. It was not their house. Not anymore. The bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings 3 months ago. Kyle had not paid the mortgage in 8 months. 8 months of living a lie. 8 months of posting photos of champagne brunches and shopping sprees while the roof over their heads was being repossessed. I clicked on the latest document filed by the bank lawyers. It was a notice of auction. The auction date was set for next month. But there was a clause, a reinstatement clause. If Kyle could pay the full past due balance plus legal fees by this coming Friday, the bank would halt the auction and reinstate the loan. I looked at the number at the bottom of the page. The total amount needed to save the house, $120,000. I sat back in the hard library chair. The teenager next to me shouted at his game, but I barely heard him. The pieces of the puzzle were slamming into place with the force of a freight train. $120,000 due by Friday, plus the gambling debts, plus the high-interest loans coming due. Kyle needed close to $200,000 immediately. If he did not get it, he would lose the house. He would lose his car. He would lose the fake reputation he had built with my parents. My mother would find out her golden son-in-law was a fraud. Jasmine would find out she was broke. His entire world was days away from collapsing. He was desperate. And desperate men do not think rationally, they think tactically. I closed my eyes and replayed the last family dinner before the fire. It was 2 weeks ago. I had been tired from work, but I went, because Mom guilted me into it. We were sitting at the dining table and Jasmine was bragging about her new designer bag. I remembered what I said. I had been frustrated. I had said something like, I wish I could spend money like that, but I am saving up. I just put $50,000 in cash in my safe for a down payment on a vacation rental. Plus, Grandma's jewelry is in there, and the insurance on that alone is costing me a fortune. I had said it. I had literally handed him the map. I opened my eyes and looked at the calendar on the screen. The deadline for the house payment was this Friday. My apartment burned down on Tuesday. It was the perfect crime. Or so he thought. He knew I kept cash in the safe. He knew the sapphire necklace alone was appraised at $80,000. He did not just break in to burn the place. He broke in to rob me. He used the key I gave my mother. He punched in the code. He opened the safe. He took the $50,000 cash. He took the necklace. He probably took my birth certificate and passport just to be cruel. And then, to cover his tracks, he poured gasoline on my living room floor. He set the fire to hide the theft. He figured the fire would melt the safe, or at least destroy the evidence that it had been opened. He figured the police would blame it on a candle or an electrical short. He figured I would be too devastated to investigate. He was counting on me being the victim. He was counting on me being the sad, lonely sister who needed his charity. But he forgot one thing. He forgot that numbers leave a trail that fire cannot burn. I looked at the total debt on the screen again, the foreclosure notice, the gambling liens. Kyle was drowning, and instead of learning to swim, he decided to use me as a life raft, and then set the raft on fire. A cold fury settled in my chest. It was different from the anger I felt yesterday. Yesterday was emotional. Yesterday was hurt feelings. This was clinical. This was professional. Kyle was not family. He was a liability. He was a bad asset. And my parents were investors who were protecting a Ponzi scheme. I pulled out a flash drive from my pocket. I downloaded every single document: the deed transfer, the foreclosure notice, the gambling judgment, the UCC filings. I created a folder named The Friar Project. I checked the time. It was noon. I had 3 days until Friday. 3 days until his deadline. He was expecting to sell the necklace this week. He was probably meeting a fence or a shady jeweler right now to turn my grandmother's legacy into quick cash to save his own skin. I could go to the police now. I had the motive. I had the opportunity. But if I went to the police now, he might claim the necklace was a gift. He might claim the cash was his. My parents would back him up. They would say I gave it to him to help the family. No, I needed him to admit it. I needed him to think he had won. I needed to lure him into a trap so deep that even my mother's denial could not save him. I logged out of the computer and stood up. The librarian smiled at me as I walked past the desk. "Did you find what you were looking for, dear?" she asked. I adjusted my jacket and smiled back, a smile that did not reach my eyes. Yes, I found everything. I found the receipt for my life. I walked out into the sunshine. I picked up my phone and dialed my mother's number. It was time to initiate phase 2. I was going to play the role they wanted me to play. The gullible idiot. The sister who just got a massive insurance payout. I was going to dangle $1 million in front of a man who needed $200,000 to survive. And I was going to watch him jump. The smell of burnt hair and expensive acetone always gave me a headache, but today it felt like a battlefield. I walked into the upscale salon where my mother Clara had been getting her hair dyed the same shade of honey blonde for 20 years. The receptionist tried to stop me. She looked at my discount department store blazer and frowned, but I walked right past her. I found my mother in the third chair. She was wearing a black cape and staring at herself in the mirror while a stylist named Pierre folded foils into her hair. She looked peaceful. She looked like a woman who did not have a care in the world. She certainly did not look like a mother whose daughter was currently homeless because of a family betrayal. I stood behind her. I did not say a word. I just looked at her reflection in the mirror. It took her a moment to notice me. When our eyes met in the glass, she jumped slightly, causing Pierre to drop his comb. "Nia," she hissed. "What are you doing here? You cannot just barge in here. This is my private time." I kept my face neutral. I practiced this expression in the car mirror for 10 minutes. It was the face of a defeated daughter, the face of someone who needed help. "I am sorry, Mom," I said, keeping my voice low so the woman in the next chair could not hear. "I needed to find you. It is urgent." Clara sighed and waved Pierre away. He rolled his eyes and stepped back, giving us a foot of space. "What is it now, Nia? Do you need money? Because I told you your father is very stressed about the anniversary party expenses. We cannot be handing out cash just because you were careless with a candle." I clenched my hands in my pockets to stop them from shaking. She was still pushing the candle narrative. She was still gaslighting me. "It is not about money, Mom. It is about the insurance claim." Her eyes narrowed. What about it? I stepped closer, leaning in so my face was right next to hers in the mirror. The investigator called me. He needs to log all the keys to the apartment. He says if I cannot account for every single key, the insurance company might deny the claim. They might say I was negligent with access. I watched her pupils. They dilated, a tiny flicker of fear. I need the spare key, Mom, the one I gave you. I need to hand it over to the investigator by 5 o'clock today so he can tag it and clear the claim. If I do not give it to him, I lose the payout. It was a lie, a beautiful, calculated lie. But Clara did not know how insurance investigations worked. She only knew about money. And she knew that if I did not get the payout, I would be a financial burden on her and Dad. Clara shifted in her chair. The plastic cape crinkled loudly. She looked down at her manicured hands. I told you, Naya. I do not have it on me. I know you do not have it on you, Mom. But is it at home? Can I go get it? Or can you tell me where it is so I can go pick it up? She picked at a loose thread on the cape. She refused to meet my eyes in the mirror. I think I lost it, she said. Her voice was airy and fake. I have looked everywhere. It must have fallen out of my purse at the grocery store months ago. I meant to tell you, but I forgot. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. She was lying. If she had lost a key to my apartment, she would have called me immediately to change the locks. Clara was paranoid about security. She would never just lose a key and shrug it off. Mom, look at me. I put my hand on her shoulder. She flinched. If you lost it months ago, why did you not tell me? You know how dangerous that is. Anyone could have found it. Anyone could have walked in. I was busy, Nia. I have a life. I cannot keep track of every little thing you give me. I pressed harder. I needed her to break. I needed her to say the name. The investigator says there was no forced entry, Mom. Whoever got in used a key. And since I had my key and Dad says he never touches the spare, that leaves you. Or whoever you gave it to. Clara turned her head sharply, pulling away from my hand. Are you accusing me? Are you accusing your own mother of burning down your apartment? Have you lost your mind? No, Mom. I am not accusing you. But I think you gave the key to someone. I did not, she snapped. Did you give it to Jasmine? The name hit her like a physical slap. Her mouth opened and closed. She looked around the salon to see if anyone was watching. Why would I give it to Jasmine? She has her own house. A beautiful house. She does not need to go to your little apartment. I leaned in close to her ear. Because I saw the sapphire necklace, Mom. Grandma necklace. I saw it on Jasmine's neck yesterday. It was in my safe. The safe that requires a key and a code to get to. Clara's face went pale. The blood drained out of her cheeks, leaving her looking like a ghost wrapped in black plastic. You are seeing things. Jasmine has plenty of jewelry. She does not need yours. Mom, stop lying. I know she has the key. I know she went in there. Did you give it to her? Clara's eyes filled with tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of panic. She was cornered. She just wanted to borrow a dress. Clara blurted out. The salon suddenly went silent for me. The noise of the blow-dryers and the chatter faded into a dull hum. What did you say? I whispered. Clara started talking fast, her words tumbling out in a desperate attempt to justify herself. Jasmine called me last week. She said she had a big event, and she knew you had that vintage red dress she liked. She said she called you, but you did not answer. She just wanted to borrow it, Nia. She is your sister. Family shares things. I gave her the key and the code because I thought she would just run in, grab the dress, and leave. It was harmless. Harmless. My knees felt weak. I gripped the back of the salon chair to stay upright. So you admit it, you gave her access behind my back. Clara wiped her eyes carefully, trying not to smudge her mascara. I did not know, Nia. I swear I did not know. She told me she just went in and left. When you called about the fire, I was terrified. You were terrified. I repeated. What about me, Mom? I was on the street. Clara looked up at me, and for the first time I saw the truth in her eyes. It was a terrifying truth. She was not protecting Jasmine because she thought Jasmine was innocent. She was protecting Jasmine because she knew exactly what had happened. She grabbed my hand. Her grip was tight and desperate. Nia, listen to me. You cannot tell the investigator. You cannot tell the police. Why not? Because Kyle? She stopped. She clamped her hand over her mouth. I froze. Because Kyle what, Mom? She shook her head violently. Nothing. Just, Kyle and Jasmine are finally doing well. They are about to close a big deal. If you bring the police into this, it will ruin their reputation. It will ruin the family name. Can't you just let it go? You have insurance, right? You will get the money. Why do you have to destroy your sister's life over an accident? An accident. I pulled my hand away from hers, as if she had burned me. Mom. Kyle was seen on camera leaving my building 10 minutes before the explosion. Clara did not look surprised. She did not gasp. She did not ask if I was sure. She just looked down at her lap and whispered, I did not know he would go that far. Jasmine said they just needed some collateral for a loan. She said they would pay you back before you even noticed the cash was gone. I thought they were just going to open the safe. I did not know about the fire, Nia. I swear on my life I did not know about the fire until you called. The world stopped spinning. There it was. The confession. She knew they were going to rob me. She knew. She had authorized the theft. She had given them the key and the code so they could steal my savings and my inheritance to pay off their debts. She had valued their financial comfort over my security. She had signed off on the robbery of her own daughter. And when the robbery turned into arson, when her plan spiraled out of control and almost killed me, she did not call the police. She did not come to save me. She told me not to ruin the rug. She left me homeless to protect the criminals. I looked at the woman in the chair. I looked at the foils in her hair and the wrinkles around her eyes. I had spent 32 years trying to please this woman. I had got straight A's. I had built a career. I had been the good, quiet, responsible daughter, hoping that one day she would look at me with the same adoration she gave Jasmine. But now I realized that was never going to happen. Because in her story, I was not the protagonist. I was the spare parts. I was the resource to be harvested to keep the golden child shining. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a tether being cut. The cord that connected a child to a mother severed instantly and cleanly. I stood up straight. I smoothed down my cheap blazer. My face was dry. My heart was cold. Nia, please. Clara begged, reaching out again. Don't cause a scene. We can work this out. Dad will give you some money. We will buy you new furniture. Just don't make this a legal issue. I looked at her hand reaching for me. I did not take it. You are right, Mom, I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. I won't make a scene. Clara exhaled a long breath of relief. She slumped back in the chair. Oh, thank God. You are a good girl, Nia. I knew you would be reasonable. We will discuss this at dinner on Sunday. Okay. I looked at her reflection one last time. Yes, Sunday. I will see you there. I turned and walked away. Pierre the stylist stepped back in to resume his work. I heard Clara giggling nervously. Oh, children, she said to him. Always so dramatic. I walked out of the salon and into the parking lot. The sun was shining, but I did not feel it. I felt nothing. The Nia who wanted a mother was dead. She had died in that salon chair. The woman who walked to the car was someone else entirely. I was not a daughter anymore. I was a forensic auditor working a case. And I had just confirmed the identities of the accomplices. I took out my phone and called Miller. I have the confirmation, I said. My mother gave them the key. She admitted it. She knew about the robbery. Miller paused on the line. Are you okay, Nia? Number 1, I said. I am not okay. But I am ready. I got into my car. I did not cry. Crying was for family. This was business. I had the motive. I had the method. I had the confirmation. Now all I needed was to deliver the verdict. The anniversary party was in 3 days. They thought they had silenced me. They thought they had bought my silence with the promise of new furniture. They had no idea that I was not coming to dinner to eat. I was coming to burn their house down, not with gasoline, but with the truth. I started the car and drove toward the one place where I could finish this, the bank. I had one more stop to make before the party. If they wanted to play games with fake jewelry, I was going to show them what real value looked like. The hunt was over. The execution was about to begin. I sat in the driver's seat of my rental car parked 2 blocks away from the luxury hotel where I was staying. The engine was off. The only light came from the glow of my smartphone screen. I checked my reflection in the camera app one last time. I applied a fresh coat of lip gloss and pinched my cheeks to give them a rosy, flustered look. I needed to look like a woman who had just won the lottery, not a woman who was planning an execution. I took a deep breath and hit the FaceTime icon for the group chat named Family First. A name that had always felt like a bad joke, but tonight felt like the punchline. It rang 3 times before the connection established. The screen filled with the pixelated image of my parents' living room. They were all there. Mom was on the sofa with a glass of wine. Dad was reading a magazine. Jasmine and Kyle were squeezed into the armchair together, scrolling on their phones. They looked bored. They looked annoyed that I was interrupting their evening. "What is it, Nia?" Mom asked without looking up from her wine. "We are in the middle of a movie. Can this wait until tomorrow?" I forced my smile to widen. I made my eyes sparkle with manic energy. "No, Mom, it cannot wait. You are not going to believe this. I just got off the phone with the insurance adjuster and the fire department chief." Kyle looked up. His eyes were wary. He was checking to see if I was angry, to see if I knew. "Yeah. And? What did they say? Did they find the candle you left burning?" I laughed. A high-pitched giddy sound that tasted like acid in my throat. "No, Kyle. That is the best part. It wasn't a candle. It wasn't me at all. The chief said it was a faulty junction box in the wall behind the television. It was old wiring, a complete accident. They officially ruled it as an electrical failure." I watched Kyle's shoulders drop. The tension left his body instantly. He exhaled a breath he must have been holding for 3 days. He exchanged a quick look with Jasmine, a look that said, "We got away with it." "That is great news, Nia," Jasmine said, her voice dripping with fake relief. "See? I told you it wasn't your fault. Didn't I tell her that, Kyle?" "But that is not even the big news," I interrupted, leaning closer to the camera. "Because it was the building's fault, and because I had that premium replacement policy, the insurance company is fast-tracking the settlement. They want to close the file before the weekend to avoid bad press for the building management." I paused for effect. I waited until I had everyone full attention. "They are wiring the money on Friday morning. For the contents, the displacement, and the emotional trauma." "How much?" Dad asked. He finally put down his magazine. I lowered my voice to a whisper as if I was sharing a state secret. $1.2 million. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It was the silence of predators smelling blood in the water. Mom put her wine glass down on the table. She missed the coaster and it clinked loudly against the glass surface, but she didn't notice. $1.2 million, she repeated. "Are you sure, Nia? That sounds like a lot for a 2-bedroom apartment." "It is." I gushed, playing the part of the overwhelmed idiot perfectly. "I guess because of the trauma and the negligence, they added a huge punitive damage clause. Plus, they are reimbursing me for Grandma's sapphire necklace at current market value." At the mention of the necklace, Jasmine's hand flew to her throat. She wasn't wearing it right now, but the guilt was written all over her face. "Wow," Kyle said. He sat up straight, pushing Jasmine slightly to the side to get closer to the camera. That is amazing, Nia. Seriously. Wow. You are a millionaire." I nodded vigorously. "I know. I am freaking out. I have never seen that much money in my life. I don't even know what to do with it. It is sitting in my checking account on Friday, and I'm terrified. I mean, should I put it in a savings account? Should I buy a new apartment? I am so bad with this stuff. I feel like I'm going to mess it up. This was the bait. I threw it into the water and waited. It took exactly 3 seconds for the shark to bite. Kyle leaned into the screen. His face was filled with a sudden, intense concern. No, no, Nia. Do not put it in a savings account. That is the worst thing you can do. Inflation is at 6%. If you leave it in the bank, you are literally losing money every day. You need to make that capital work for you. I blinked rapidly, batting my eyelashes. Really? But investing is so scary, Kyle. I don't know anything about stocks. Stocks are for suckers. Kyle said, his voice taking on that smooth sales pitch tone I hated so much. Listen to me, Nia. You are family. I cannot let you throw this opportunity away. I have been working on a project, a cryptocurrency arbitrage fund combined with high-yield real estate trusts. It is averaging 20% returns monthly. Monthly. I gasped. Is that legal? Kyle laughed. A confident, condescending laugh. It is aggressive, Nia. It is how the rich get richer. Look, Jasmine and I were going to put our own money in this week, but, well, since you have this liquidity event, maybe we can partner up. I can manage the portfolio for you. No fees, obviously, because we are family. I bit my lip, pretending to think. I don't know, Kyle. It sounds complicated. Maybe I should just talk to a financial advisor at the bank. Dad jumped in now. The man who had refused to let me sleep in his house 3 nights ago was suddenly very interested in my financial well-being. Nia listened to Kyle. He knows this market. The banks will just rip you off with fees. You need to keep this in the family. We have to look out for each other. I looked at their faces. 4 faces, greedy and desperate. They saw me as a piggy bank. A piggy bank they had tried to smash and now wanted to glue back together just long enough to empty it. Okay, I said slowly. I trust you guys. You are right. Family first. Kyle pumped his fist. Yes. Smart move, Naya. Smart move. Listen, the fund closes for new investors on Friday at 5 p.m. You need to bring the check or do the transfer by then. Friday, I said. That is perfect. That is the day of Mom and Dad anniversary party. There was a slight pause. The awkward memory of them uninviting me hung in the air. Mom cleared her throat. Yes, well, about that, Nia. We were all just so stressed the other day. Of course you are coming. You are my daughter. We couldn't celebrate 40 years without you. But the guest list, I said. Jasmine said there was no room. Jasmine waved her hand dismissively. Oh, please. We will make room. We will squeeze a chair in at the head table. You can sit right next to me and Kyle. We can discuss the investment strategy over dinner. I smiled, a real smile this time, because they had just invited the executioner to the feast. Okay then, it is a plan. I will bring the cashier check to the party. We can sign the papers there. Perfect, Kyle said. He was practically salivating. Seriously, Nia, I am so proud of you. You are turning a tragedy into a triumph. You have no idea, Kyle, I said softly. We chatted for another minute. They were sickeningly sweet. Mom asked if I needed to borrow a dress. Dad asked if I was eating enough. It was a masterclass in hypocrisy. I hung up the phone and the screen went black. The silence returned to the car. But it wasn't lonely anymore. It was heavy with anticipation. They took the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. $1.2 million. The number was fake. The insurance claim was still under investigation. There was no payout coming on Friday. But Kyle didn't know that. He needed that money to save his house and his kneecaps. He would be at that party waiting for a check that didn't exist. And instead of a check, I was going to hand him a prison sentence. I started the car. The engine purred to life. I had 3 days to prepare. I needed to get the recording of this call to Miller. It proved they were trying to defraud me. It showed Kyle desperation. But more importantly, I needed to go shopping. If I was going to the party of the century, I needed a dress that looked like revenge. Something red, something dangerous, something that said I survived the fire, and now I am the fire. I pulled out of the parking spot. Friday could not come fast enough. The streetlights blurred into long streaks of neon orange against my windshield as I drove toward the fire station. It was raining again, the kind of cold drizzle that seeps into your bones, but I was sweating. I had the plan locked in my head, but plans are fragile things until they survive contact with the enemy. I pulled into the lot and saw Miller standing outside under the overhang smoking a cigarette. He looked like a man who was tired of waiting for the world to make sense. I rolled down the window. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with his tobacco smoke. I did it, I said without preamble. They took the bait. They think I am getting $1.2 million on Friday. Miller flicked his cigarette into a puddle. He leaned down, looking into my car with those sharp, discerning eyes. And let me guess, they suddenly want to be your best friends again. They want to help you invest it. I nodded. Kyle wants me to put it into a crypto fund. He says the deadline is Friday night. They invited me to the anniversary party to hand over the check. Miller sighed and straightened up. It is a good trap, Nia. It shows intent to defraud. It shows desperation. But it does not prove arson. We need to bridge the gap. We need them to admit that the money is for the debts they incurred before the fire. We need them to mention the theft. If you just catch them trying to scam you out of insurance money, that is a white-collar crime. It is fraud. It is not 20 years in a maximum security prison for burning down a building. I gripped the steering wheel. He was right. I needed the smoking gun. I am going back to the house, I said. Miller frowned. Tonight. Why? To get my old boxes. That is the excuse anyway. I told my mother I needed some old winter coats since I lost everything. But I am going there to plant a bug. Miller raised an eyebrow. Illegal surveillance is inadmissible in court, Naya. You know that. I smiled a cold, humorless smile. Not in this state. This is a one-party consent state as long as I am a party to the conversation initially. And even if it is not admissible in criminal court, I can use it to impeach their testimony. I can use it to force a confession when we confront them. Once they know I have the tape, they will turn on each other to cut a deal. Miller stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You are playing a dangerous game. If they catch you planting a listening device, they will know you are on to them. They might get violent. Kyle is desperate, remember. I am desperate too, I said. I am desperate for justice. I drove away before he could talk me out of it. The drive to my parents' house took 20 minutes. 20 minutes to rehearse my performance. I had to be the broken daughter one last time. The submissive scapegoat who just wanted a warm coat and her mother approval. I parked down the street. I did not want to block the driveway in case I had to leave in a hurry. I walked up the path clutching a reusable grocery bag. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. In my pocket was a high-powered digital voice recorder. It was small, black, and activated by sound. It had a battery life of 48 hours. I had attached a strip of industrial-strength Velcro to the back of it. I rang the doorbell. Mom opened it. She was holding a glass of Chardonnay. Her cheeks were flushed. Nia, she said, surprised. I thought you were coming on Friday. I just needed a coat, Mom, I said, keeping my eyes downcast. It is really cold sleeping in the car. I thought maybe I could grab those old boxes from the basement. She rolled her eyes but stepped back. Fine, make it quick. Your father is watching the game and Kyle and Jasmine are in the living room discussing business. Do not disturb them. I walked in. The house was warm. It smelled of roast chicken and expensive perfume. The sounds of the football game blared from the den. I could hear Kyle's voice booming from the formal living room. I walked toward the basement door, which was conveniently located right next to the living room archway. I paused. I can just say hi, right? I asked Mom. She waved her hand dismissively and walked back toward the kitchen to refill her glass. Make it fast. I stepped into the living room. Kyle and Jasmine were sitting on the beige velvet sofa, the sofa that was the centerpiece of the room, the sofa they sat on every single night to watch TV and judge the world. Hey guys, I said softly. Kyle jumped. He looked at me with a mix of annoyance and greed. Oh, hey Nia, we were just talking about the portfolio, getting everything ready for your big entry on Friday. That is great, I said. I really appreciate it, Kyle. I am just going to grab some boxes. I dropped my reusable bag on the floor intentionally. Oops! I am so clumsy. I bent down to pick it up. I fell to my knees right next to the sofa. You okay there? Jasmine asked, not bothering to get up. Yeah, just tripped, I said. I reached under the sofa, pretending to retrieve the bag. My hand found the wooden frame of the couch. I peeled the backing off the Velcro on the recorder and pressed it firmly against the wood on the underside of the frame. It was hidden deep in the shadows. No one would find it unless they flipped the couch over. I grabbed my bag and stood up. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might faint. Got it, I said, breathless. You look sweaty, Jasmine noted. I walked here from the bus stop. I lied. Well, try not to drip on the carpet, she said. I retreated to the basement, grabbed a box of old moth-eaten sweaters, and left the house. I did not stay to chat. I did not accept a glass of water. I walked out the door with the box in my arms and the knowledge that I had just left a spy in the heart of the enemy stronghold. I returned to my car, but I did not drive away. I sat there in the dark 2 houses down. I pulled out a receiver device. The recorder I had bought was expensive. It had a remote transmission feature that worked within a short range. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and turned up the volume. At first, there was just static. Then the sound of rustling fabric. Someone sitting down. I held my breath. The voice came through crystal clear. It was Kyle. God, she is pathetic. Did you see her tripping over her own feet? I cannot believe she is related to you, Jasmine. I clenched my teeth. Then Jasmine voice. She is a mess, but she is a rich mess. That is all that matters. Are you sure she is going to bring the check on Friday? Kyle laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. She will bring it. She is desperate for us to like her. Did you see how her eyes lit up when I said we could be partners? The dumb cow believes anything. I am going to drain that account dry. 1.2 million. That pays off the shark, it pays off the mortgage, and it buys me that new Porsche I have been looking at. My stomach churned. He was already spending my trauma money. But what about the transfer? Jasmine asked. Won't she notice when the money does not go into an investment fund? Kyle scoffed. I will dazzle her with some fake spreadsheets. By the time she realizes the money is gone, we will have legally shielded it in offshore shells. Or maybe we will just tell her the market crashed. What is she going to do? Sue us. She does not have the guts. There was a pause, the sound of glass clinking. Then Jasmine lowered her voice. I am worried about the necklace, Kyle. She stared at it yesterday. Like really stared at it. Relax, babe, Kyle said. She did not say anything, did she? No, but she knows what grandma jewelry looks like. So what? It is your word against hers. Then a new voice entered the recording. It was heavy and gravelly. It was my father, Otis. He must have walked in from the den during the conversation. What are you two whispering about? Dad asked. Jasmine's voice was whining now like a little girl. The necklace, Dad. Nia saw it. I am scared she is going to say something on Friday. I pressed the headphones tighter against my ears. This was the moment. This was where my father would either defend me or destroy me. Let her say something. Otis grunted. Who cares? But it is hers, Dad, Jasmine said. It was in the will. Otis laughed, a dry dismissal that hurt more than the fire. Nia does not need jewelry. She does not go anywhere. She does not impress anyone. That necklace was wasted on her. It looks better on you, Jasmine. You have the elegance for it. If she brings it up, I will just tell her she is mistaken. I will tell her it is a replica we bought to make you feel better. A replica. He was going to gaslight me. He was going to look me in the eye and tell me my reality was false to protect his thief of a daughter. But what if she brings proof? Jasmine asked. What if she has a photo or something? She lost everything in the fire, Otis said confidently. She has no photos. She has no papers. She is a ghost. We define the truth now. As long as she hands over that check on Friday, she can think whatever she wants. We need that money to save this house. If sacrificing Nia feelings keeps a roof over our heads, so be it. She should be grateful she can help the family. I ripped the headphones off. I threw them onto the passenger seat. I felt like I was going to throw up. She should be grateful. He knew. He knew everything. He knew they stole it. He knew they were planning to steal the insurance money. And he did not care. In his eyes, I was just a resource. I was cattle to be slaughtered so the golden child could eat steak. I sat there in the dark, breathing heavy, ragged breaths. The tears finally came, but they were hot and fast. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of validation. I was not crazy. I was not paranoid. I was right. I put the headphones back on. I needed to make sure the recording was saved. I needed to make sure every single word was locked in. Kyle's voice came back on. Do not worry about Naya. Friday is going to be a celebration. We get the money, we save the house, and we get rid of her drama. It is a win-win. I hit the stop button. I saved the file. I backed it up to the cloud. I emailed it to Miller. I had it. I had the conspiracy. I had the admission of the theft. I had the admission of the motive to pay off the debts. I had the proof that my parents were accessories after the fact. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 9 p.m. I started the car. The rain was falling harder now, washing away the grime of the city. You are right, Kyle, I whispered to the empty car. Friday is going to be a celebration, but you are not the one who is going to be celebrating. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb. The house shrank in my rearview mirror, a warm, glowing box full of monsters. I had the weapon. Now I just needed to sharpen the blade. I drove toward the mall. The stores were open late. I had a dress to buy. And I had a speech to prepare. The victim was gone. The auditor was in charge. And the audit was about to be closed. The fluorescent lights of the high-end department store hummed with a frequency that usually annoyed me, but today it sounded like a battle hymn. I walked past the racks of sensible beige pantsuits and gray cardigans that defined my previous life. The old Naya, the forensic auditor who wanted to blend into the background, would have headed straight for the clearance rack. She would have bought something modest, something that said, "Please do not look at me while I fix your mistakes." But that Nia was dead. She died in the ashes of her apartment. The woman walking through the store today was not looking for camouflage. She was looking for war paint. I stopped in front of a mannequin in the center of the designer wing. It was wearing a dress that looked less like clothing and more like a weapon. It was floor-length silk cut on the bias with a plunging neckline and a slit that went up to the thigh. But it was the color that stopped me. It was not just red. It was crimson. It was the color of fresh arterial blood. It was the color of the fire that had taken my home. "Can I help you, miss?" A sales associate with perfect posture and a judgmental stare approached me. She looked at my sneakers and my jeans, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She did not think I could afford the zipper, let alone the dress. "I need this in a size 4. I said, my voice flat and commanding. "And I need shoes. 4-inch heels. Gold. Strappy. Something that says I own the building, not just the apartment." The sales associate blinked, surprised by my tone. She hesitated for a second, then nodded and scurried off. I stepped into the dressing room. The mirrors went from floor to ceiling, reflecting every angle of my exhaustion. I looked tired. My eyes were shadowed. My skin was pale. But when I slipped that silk dress over my head, everything changed. The fabric was cool against my skin like liquid metal. I zipped it up and turned to the glass. The transformation was visceral. The dress did not just fit, it armored me. The red silk hugged my curves, highlighting a strength I had forgotten I possessed. I looked dangerous. I looked like the kind of woman who burned down cities for sport. I looked like the villain my family always accused me of being, and for the first time I embraced it. I stepped out of the fitting room. The sales associate gasped. It was not a polite gasp. It was genuine. "It is perfect," she whispered. I handed her my credit card. It was the emergency card I kept in my phone case, the only one that survived the fire. "I will wear it out," I said. "Just cut the tags." I walked out of that mall with my head held high. The heels clicked against the marble floor with a rhythmic sharpness. Click, 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 like a countdown. People turned to look. Men stared. Women whispered. For 32 years, I had been the invisible sister, the shadow behind Jasmine's light. But tonight, I was the sun, and I was going to burn them all. I returned to my hotel room and turned it into a command center. The silk dress was hung carefully on the back of the door, a crimson sentry watching over me. I sat at the desk and opened my laptop. The dress was the theater, but the data was the ammunition. I took out 3 encrypted USB drives. They were heavy metal drives, military grade. I plugged the first one in. The blue light blinked rapidly as I transferred the files. Folder 1. The forensic accounting report on Kyle. Every single fraudulent loan application. Every unpaid gambling debt, every shell company. The spreadsheet showed a clear timeline of his financial collapse, leading right up to the day of the fire. Folder 2. The security footage from the bodega. Kyle limping into my building. Kyle leaving with the bag. The timestamp matching the alarm deactivation log. Folder 3. The audio recording. The recording I had risked everything to get last night. The clear, crisp sound of my mother admitting she gave them the key. The sound of my father plotting to gaslight me. The sound of Kyle laughing about spending my money. I copied the files. Then I verified them. Then I encrypted them. Redundancy is the first rule of auditing. You never trust a single backup. I labeled the first drive, District Attorney. This one was going to Miller. I had already emailed him the audio file, but he needed the full physical package for the grand jury. I labeled the second drive, Civil Litigation. This one was for my lawyer. I had hired him this morning, a shark who specialized in family disputes and asset recovery. He had listened to my story and told me we were not just going to sue them, we were going to eviscerate them. I labeled the third drive, The Gift. This one was for me. This one was staying in my purse. Just in case the technology failed, just in case the projector broke, I wanted to have the weapon in my hand. I sent a final email to Miller. Subject: Party time. Body: I am going in at 7 p.m. The package is ready. Stand by for my signal. Miller replied instantly. Copy that. We are staged 2 blocks away. Do not engage physically, Nia. Just drop the bomb and get off the stage. I closed the laptop. The room was quiet, but inside my head it sounded like a symphony tuning up. The violins were screeching, the drums were rolling. I looked at the clock. 5 p.m. 2 hours until showtime. I stood up and walked over to the bed. Lying there was a box. It was a beautiful box wrapped in shimmering gold paper with a massive white satin bow. It looked like an anniversary present. It looked like love. I sat on the edge of the bed and ran my hand over the smooth paper. Inside this box was not a silver platter or a crystal vase. Inside were 2 documents that Miller and my lawyer had rushed to me via courier an hour ago. Document 1. A warrant for the arrest of Kyle Davis for arson in the first-degree grand larceny and insurance fraud. Miller had pulled strings. The audio recording was enough to get a judge to sign it this afternoon. Document 2. A civil summons for Otis and Clara Vance for conspiracy to defraud an accessory after the fact. I lifted the lid of the box carefully. I placed the documents inside. The stiff legal paper rustled against the cardboard. I added a small greeting card on top. On the front of the card was a picture of a happy family toasting champagne. I opened the card and wrote in my neatest handwriting, "Happy 40th anniversary. You wanted me to help the family. I helped you find the truth. Enjoy the retirement home. Love, Nia." I sealed the envelope and placed it on top of the warrant. I put the lid back on the box and tied the bow. It was perfect. It was beautiful. It was a Trojan horse wrapped in gold leaf. I stood up and walked to the full-length mirror. I was ready. The hair was sleek and pulled back. The makeup was sharp enough to cut glass. The red dress flowed around me like liquid fire. I picked up the golden box. It felt heavy in my hands. The weight of justice, the weight of freedom, For years I had carried the weight of their expectations. I had carried the weight of their disappointment. I had carried the weight of being the scapegoat. Tonight I was putting that weight down, and I was handing it back to them. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. "Showtime," I whispered. I walked out of the hotel room, leaving the ghost of the old Nia behind. The elevator dinged and I stepped in, pressing the button for the lobby. The doors closed, sealing me in. When they opened again, I would be walking into the lion's den. But the lions had forgotten one thing: I was the one holding the whip. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel was suffocatingly expensive. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling, casting a golden light over 300 guests. There were towers of champagne glasses and waiters in white gloves moving like ghosts through the crowd. It was a room designed to intimidate. It was a room designed to say, "We are better than you." My parents had spent 40 years building this facade. Tonight, I was going to tear it down. I stood at the top of the marble staircase. The heavy oak doors had just been opened for me by a doorman who looked at my red dress with wide eyes. I took a breath. This was it. The moment I stepped onto that carpet, there was no turning back. I began to descend. My gold heels clicked against the marble. Click, click, click. The sound cut through the murmuring of the crowd. Heads began to turn. At first, it was just a few people near the entrance. Then a ripple of silence spread through the room. The chatter died down. The clinking of silverware stopped. Even the string quartet seemed to falter for a beat. I saw them staring. They were looking for the homeless daughter, the one who slept in her car, the one who wore polyester blends and apologized for existing. Instead, they saw a woman wrapped in crimson silk. The dress moved with me like liquid fire. The slit up my thigh revealed just enough skin to be dangerous. My hair was pulled back tight, exposing my face and my diamond earrings. I did not look like a victim. I looked like a queen coming to claim her throne. I saw my parents near the center of the room. They were holding court, accepting compliments from the mayor and the local bank president. When the silence reached them, they turned around. My mother Clara dropped her champagne flute. It shattered on the floor, but no one moved to clean it up. Her mouth hung open. She looked at me with a mixture of horror and confusion. This was not the daughter she had dismissed at the hair salon. My father Otis narrowed his eyes. He was calculating. He was looking at the dress and wondering how I paid for it. But then his eyes dropped lower. He wasn't looking at my shoes. He was looking at my hands. He was looking for the check. I reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted for me. I walked straight toward my parents. I kept my face smooth and unreadable. "Nia," my mother whispered when I got close enough. Her voice was trembling. You look expensive." I finished the sentence for her. I smiled, a sharp, jagged smile. "Happy anniversary, Mom." Otis stepped forward. He put a heavy hand on my shoulder. It was meant to look affectionate, but I felt the pressure of his grip. It was a warning. "You made quite an entrance." He grumbled low enough so only I could hear. "I hope you brought more than just a fancy dress. We have a deal, Nia." I patted his hand and removed it from my shoulder. "Don't worry, Dad. I brought exactly what this family deserves." Before he could ask what that meant, a shadow fell over us. Kyle appeared. He looked manic. His tuxedo was expensive, but he was sweating. Beads of perspiration had gathered on his upper lip. His eyes were darting around the room as if he expected a loan shark to jump out from behind the buffet table. "Nia," he said, his voice too loud and too cheerful. "You made it." He moved in for a hug. I stiffened but let him embrace me briefly. He smelled of scotch and fear. "Of course I made it, Kyle." I pulled back. I wouldn't miss this. He grabbed my elbow and steered me away from my parents toward a quiet corner near the kitchen doors. His grip was tight, desperate. "Okay, cut the pleasantries," he hissed. "Where is it? Where is the check? The fund closes in less than an hour, Nia. I need to do the transfer now or we lose the window." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had burned my home, the man who had stolen my grandmother's legacy. He was shaking. He was terrified. I reached into my clutch purse. Kyle's eyes widened. He practically stopped breathing. I pulled out a tube of lipstick. His face fell. "What are you doing?" he snapped. "Stop playing games, Nia. Do you have the money or not? Jasmine and I are counting on you. The whole family is counting on you." I applied the lipstick slowly, using the reflection in a nearby window. "Relax, Kyle. You are going to give yourself a heart attack. I have the package." "Package?" he asked. "What package?" "I told you I needed a cashier check or a wire transfer number." I capped the lipstick and turned to face him. "I brought something better. I brought a certified instrument. It is all taken care of. But I wanted to make it special." Kyle ran a hand through his hair, messing up his perfect gel style. "Special? What does that mean?" "Naya, I swear if you messed this up—" "I didn't mess it up," I said soothingly. "I put it in the gift box." Kyle blinked. "The gift box?" "Yes." I pointed toward the stage. In the center of the spotlight, next to the towering wedding cake, there was a table piled high with presents. My gold box, with the white satin bow, sat right at the top. It was the largest one there. "I put the financial documents inside that gold box," I said, "along with a card. I thought it would be a nice surprise for Mom and Dad to open it on stage. You know, like a symbolic gesture, the daughter saving the family legacy." Kyle looked at the stage and then back at me. Panic flared in his eyes. "No, no, we cannot do that. We cannot open financial documents in front of 300 people. Nia, go get the box. Bring it here. We need to process this privately." I shook my head. "I can't, Kyle. I already told the DJ. He is going to announce the gift opening in 10 minutes. It is part of the program." Kyle looked like he was going to vomit. "You told the DJ?" "Nia, are you insane? This is a private investment. It is a celebration." I insisted, keeping my voice innocent. "I want everyone to know how generous I am being. I want Mom and Dad to be proud of me publicly. Isn't that what you wanted? You said I should be grateful to help the family. Well, I am being grateful." Loudly. Kyle looked at the stage again. He was torn. He wanted the money so badly he could taste it, but he was terrified of the public display. Okay, fine," he stammered. "We will open it on stage, but as soon as they open it, I am taking the papers. I am taking them straight to the office. Do not make a speech, Nia. Just smile and wave." I smiled. "I promise, Kyle. I will just smile." He seemed to accept that. He exhaled sharply and downed the rest of his drink. Good girl. You are saving us, Nia. You have no idea." "Oh, I have some idea," I whispered as he walked away. I watched him weave through the crowd back to Jasmine. He whispered something in her ear. She looked at me across the room. Her eyes were cold and calculating. She nodded and patted her chest. And that is when I saw it. The lights in the ballroom dimmed slightly, signaling the start of the speeches. A spotlight hit the stage. Jasmine walked up the steps to the microphone. She was wearing a silver sequined gown that plunged deep in the front, and resting against her skin, glinting under the harsh stage lights, was the sapphire. My breath caught in my throat. I knew she had it. I had seen it. But seeing her wear it here at this party in front of everyone was a level of arrogance I had not anticipated. It was a deep blue oval, surrounded by diamonds. It was unmistakable. It was the necklace my grandmother had worn to her own 50th anniversary. It was the necklace she had placed in my hand on her deathbed, telling me to keep it safe. Jasmine had stolen it. She had let her husband burn down my apartment to hide the theft, and now she was wearing it as a trophy. She tapped the microphone. The feedback squeal made the crowd wince. "Hello, everyone," Jasmine cooed. Her voice was fake sweet coated in syrup. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate true love." The crowd applauded politely. My parents stood near the front of the stage beaming up at her. They looked so proud, their beautiful, successful daughter, the one who had never disappointed them. Jasmine continued, "You know 40 years is a long time. My parents have taught me so much about loyalty, about sticking together through thick and thin. In this family, we believe that we are stronger together. We believe that no matter what happens, the bond of blood is unbreakable." I felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest. It was a dark, hysterical thing. Loyalty. Blood. I looked around the room. I saw the faces of their friends. They were nodding. They believed her. They saw a perfect family. They did not see the rot underneath. Jasmine touched the necklace. She ran her fingers over the sapphire. "My mother always told me that family heirlooms are not just things," she said, looking down at Mom. "They are memories. And tonight, wearing this beautiful piece, I feel so connected to our history. I feel so blessed to be part of a legacy that values integrity and honesty above all else." Integrity. Honesty. She was mocking me. She had to be. She was wearing my stolen inheritance and preaching about honesty. I looked at my watch. 7:15. I looked toward the back of the room. The double doors were closed, but I knew Miller was there. I knew he was waiting for the signal. Jasmine was winding down her speech. "So please raise your glasses to Otis and Clara, the best parents a girl could ask for. And to our family. May we always have each other backs. Cheers!" The crowd roared. Jasmine beamed and blew a kiss to the audience. "And now," she said, her eyes locking onto mine, "I believe my sister Nia has prepared a very special surprise. A gift that truly represents her contribution to this family." She gestured toward the gold box. I stepped forward. The spotlight swung toward me. The red dress blazed in the light. I walked toward the stage. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Kyle was standing at the edge of the stage, wringing his hands. He gave me a look that said, "Give me the money." I walked past him. I walked up the stairs. I stood next to Jasmine. She leaned in close to me. "Nice dress," she whispered. "Did you find it at a thrift store?" I looked at the necklace one last time. No Jasmine. I said into the microphone, my voice booming through the speakers, "I bought it with the money I saved by not having to pay for a criminal defense attorney." Jasmine, confused, pulled back. "What?" she mouthed. I turned to the crowd. I smiled at my parents. "Happy anniversary," I said. I reached for the gold box. I untied the white ribbon. It fell to the floor like a surrender flag. I lifted the lid. Kyle took a step forward, his hand outstretched, ready to snatch the check. But I did not pull out a check. I reached in and pulled out the projector remote I had slipped in there earlier. And then I pulled out the warrant. I held the document up high. The stamp of the Superior Court was clearly visible even from the back of the room. "I am sorry I didn't bring a check," I said, my voice calm and deadly. "But I thought this would be more appropriate. Since we are talking about honesty, and since we are talking about fire." I pressed the button on the remote. The giant screen behind us, which had been showing a slideshow of my parents' wedding photos, flickered. The image changed. It was no longer a wedding photo. It was a grainy black and white video. A video of a man in a hoodie limping away from a burning building. The room went silent. Dead silent. And then I pressed play on the audio. The sound of my mother's voice filled the ballroom. I gave her the key. I did not know he would burn it down. I watched the color drain from Jasmine's face. I watched Kyle freeze mid-step. I watched my parents clutch each other in horror. The party was over. The trial had begun. The room was so quiet that I could hear the ice melting in the champagne buckets. 300 pairs of eyes were fixed on me, but I only cared about 4 of them. I looked down at my parents who were standing at the foot of the stage. My mother, Clara, was clutching her pearl necklace so tightly I thought the string might snap. My father, Otis, looked like he had been struck by lightning. His mouth was open but no sound came out. And then there were Jasmine and Kyle. Jasmine was trembling, her hand hovering over the stolen sapphire at her throat. Kyle was sweating profusely, his eyes darting between the exit signs as if calculating the distance to freedom. I raised the microphone to my lips. My voice was steady. It was the voice of a woman who had walked through fire and come out made of steel. You know, Jasmine was right. I said, my words echoing through the cavernous ballroom. Family is about legacy. It is about the truth we leave behind. And tonight, I want to add to that legacy. I want to share a very special home movie with you all, a movie that captures the true essence of the Vance family values. I pointed the small black remote at the projector screen behind me. It was currently displaying a photo of my parents cutting their wedding cake 40 years ago. They looked young and hopeful in that picture. They had no idea that 4 decades later their daughter would be standing on a stage dismantling their reputation brick by brick. I pressed the button. The wedding photo dissolved. The screen went black for a heartbeat. And then a timestamp appeared in the corner. 1:40 a.m. Tuesday. The image that flickered onto the massive screen was grainy and stark. It was the security footage from the bodega across the street from my apartment building. The angle was high, looking down at the entrance. A gasp rippled through the crowd. They saw the figure emerge from the shadows. A man in a dark hoodie. He was moving quickly, but there was something distinctive about his gait. Look closely. I narrated, my voice cool and clinical. Watch the left leg. The figure on the screen stepped off the curb. His knee buckled slightly. He corrected himself with a skip. Step, dip, step, dip. I looked at Kyle. He was paralyzed. He was watching himself on a 30-foot screen, committing a felony. That is a familiar walk, isn't it? I asked the room. We have all seen that walk at the company picnics and the holiday parties. It is the walk of a former football star who refused surgery. It is the walk of my brother-in-law, Kyle Davis. On the screen, the figure reached the door. He did not break a window. He did not kick the wood. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. He unlocks the door. I said, no forced entry. Because he had a key. A key that was given to him by a family member who swore to protect me. I pressed the button again. The video cut to the next clip. 1:55 a.m. The figure exited the building. He was carrying a large duffel bag now. It was heavy, weighing down his shoulder. He paused on the steps, looking left and right. The streetlight illuminated the bag. It was my gym bag. The one with the neon yellow strap. Everyone in the family knew that bag. He is leaving 10 minutes before the explosion, I said. And he is not leaving empty-handed. He is carrying my life savings, my documents, and my grandmother's jewelry. I let the silence stretch. I let the image burn into their retinas. The wealthy bankers and socialites in the room were shifting uncomfortably. They were witnessing a crime. They were witnessing the disintegration of a social circle. But maybe you think the video is blurry, I continued. Maybe you think it could be anyone with a bad knee and a duplicate key. So let's look at Exhibit B. I clicked the remote. The screen changed again. This footage was sharper. It was in color. It was from a different camera angle. This was footage I had not told Miller about. It was footage I had paid a private investigator $5,000 to obtain from a shady pawn shop on the south side of the city. The date stamp was yesterday. The camera showed a counter. Behind the glass was a man with tattoos on his neck. And standing in front of him, clearly visible under the bright fluorescent lights, was Kyle. He was not wearing a hoodie this time. He was wearing his signature polo shirt. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a watch. A vintage gold Rolex. My father's watch. The one I had inherited when he upgraded to a newer model and casually tossed the old one to me saying it was broken. I had fixed it. I had kept it in my safe. On the screen, Kyle haggled with the pawnbroker. He looked desperate. He was wiping sweat from his forehead. He took a stack of cash, shoved it into his pocket, and left. The crowd erupted. The whispers turned into shouts. "That is Otis' watch," I heard someone say from the second table. I recognized that watch. I looked at my father. He was staring at the screen, his face a mask of purple rage. But he wasn't angry at Kyle for stealing. He was angry at Kyle for getting caught. He was angry that his dirty laundry was being aired in high definition. "I am not done," I said, cutting through the noise. "Visuals are powerful. But in this family, we love to talk. We love to tell stories. So let's listen to a story told by the people who claim to love me." I pressed the play button for the audio file. The speakers in the ballroom were high quality. They were designed for orchestras and speeches. They amplified every breath, every nuance of tone. Static crackled for a second, and then my mother's voice boomed through the hall. I gave her the key. I did not know he would burn it down. My mother Clara let out a strangled cry. She covered her ears as if she could block out her own confession. But the recording continued. It was relentless. Jasmine said they just needed some collateral for a loan. She said they would pay you back before you even noticed the cash was gone. I looked at Jasmine. She had backed away from the edge of the stage. She looked like a trapped animal. Her friends, the bridesmaids who were sitting at the front table, were staring at her in horror. They were looking at the sapphire necklace with new eyes. And then came the finale. The voice of the man of the hour. "Kyle, the dumb cow believes anything. I am going to drain that account dry. 1.2 million. That pays off the shark, it pays off the mortgage, and it buys me that new Porsche." The vulgarity of it, the sheer greed hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Dumb cow. He had called me a dumb cow in front of the mayor, in front of the bank president who held his mortgage. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a guillotine blade waiting to drop. I lowered the microphone slightly, but I kept my eyes on the crowd. "That is the surprise," I said softly. "That is the anniversary gift. The truth. You see, my apartment didn't just catch fire. It was arson. It was a cover-up for a robbery, orchestrated by my sister, executed by my brother-in-law, and enabled by my mother." I looked down at Kyle. He had snapped. The exposure was too much for his ego. The facade he had built was crumbling, and he reacted with violence. He let out a roar of incoherent rage. "You bitch!" he screamed. "You ruin everything!" He lunged. He scrambled up the stairs to the stage, his face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. He was coming for me. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to silence the voice that was destroying him. The crowd screamed. My mother fainted, collapsing into my father's arms. I did not move. I did not flinch. I stood my ground in my red dress, clutching the remote like a scepter. Because I knew I wasn't alone. Just as Kyle reached the top step, a wall of dark suits materialized from the wings of the stage. It was not the hotel security. It was Miller and 3 uniformed police officers. They hit Kyle hard. One officer tackled him at the waist, driving him into the floor of the stage with a bone-crunching thud. The microphone stand toppled over with a loud clang. "Get off me!" Kyle shrieked. "Do you know who I am?" "You are a suspect in an arson investigation," Miller said, his voice booming without a microphone. "Kyle Davis, you are under arrest." While 2 officers cuffed Kyle, forcing his hands behind his back, Miller stood up and looked out at the crowd. He looked at Jasmine. "Jasmine Davis," he said, pointing a finger at her. "Do not move." Jasmine froze. She was halfway to the side exit. She stopped, turning slowly to face the stage. She looked small. The sequins on her dress looked cheap under the harsh lights. "I believe you are wearing evidence," Miller said. He walked down the stairs toward her. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. He stopped in front of her. "That necklace was reported stolen 3 days ago, along with $50,000 in cash." Jasmine tried to speak, but only a squeak came out. She looked at her mother for help, but Clara was unconscious on the floor being fanned by a waiter. She looked at her father, but Otis had turned his back, unable to face the humiliation. It was a gift," Jasmine stammered. "My husband gave it to me." Miller shook his head. "We have the receipt from the original purchase. It belongs to Nia Vance. Take it off." Jasmine's trembling hands reached up to the clasp. She fumbled with it, her long manicured nails scratching at her skin. Finally, it came loose. She handed the sapphire to Miller. He held it up. It caught the light. A blue star, in a room full of darkness. He turned to an officer. "Take her into custody. Possession of stolen property and conspiracy." "No!" Jasmine screamed as the officer grabbed her arm. "Mom. Dad. Do something. Nia, tell them. Tell them it is a mistake." I stood on the stage looking down at her. She was begging me. The golden child was begging the scapegoat for mercy. I picked up the microphone one last time. "It is not a mistake, Jasmine," I said. "It is an audit. And you just failed." The police dragged them out. Kyle was still shouting threats. Jasmine was weeping hysterically, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. My father was trying to help my mother up, but no one was helping him. The guests were too busy recording everything on their phones. I watched them go. I watched the heavy doors close behind them. The ballroom was still chaotic, but for me there was a strange sense of peace. The noise faded into the background. I looked at the screen behind me. The video had stopped on a freeze frame of Kyle's face in the pawn shop. I pressed the power button. The screen went black. I placed the remote on the podium next to the gold box that still contained the civil lawsuit. I would serve that to my parents later. Tonight was enough. I walked down the stairs. The crowd stared at me with a mixture of fear and awe. They did not see the quiet accountant anymore. They saw a force of nature. A woman in a tuxedo stopped me near the door. "It was the bank president, Ms. Vance," she said. Her voice was respectful. "That was efficient. If you ever need a job in risk management, call me." I smiled. A real, genuine smile. "Thank you," I said. "But I think I'm going to take a vacation first. I have a lot of frequent flyer miles to use." I walked out of the ballroom. The air in the lobby was cool and fresh. I stepped out into the night. The rain had stopped. The city lights were twinkling in the distance. My phone buzzed in my purse. It was a text from Miller. "Got them. Good work, partner." I looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there my grandmother was watching. I hoped she enjoyed the show. I hoped she saw that her sapphire was safe and that her granddaughter was no longer the one getting burned. I hailed a taxi. "Where to?" the driver asked. "The airport," I said. "One way." I did not know where I was going yet, but I knew where I wasn't going. I wasn't going back to being a victim. The fire was out, the smoke had cleared, and for the first time in my life I could breathe. The chaos in the ballroom was absolute. It was a symphony of destruction that I had composed, and now I was conducting the finale. The polite society veneer had cracked completely. Guests were scrambling toward the exits, their expensive heels clattering on the marble, while waiters dropped trays of champagne to pull out their phones and record the downfall of the Vance dynasty. I stood in the eye of the hurricane, perfectly still, watching the blue uniforms flood the room like a cleansing tide. Investigator Miller did not look like a guest anymore. He looked like the hammer of justice. He stood over Kyle, who was pinned to the stage floor by two officers. Kyle's face was pressed against the polished wood, his cheek distorted and red. He was spitting and screaming incoherent threats. "Get off me! Do you know who my father is? I will sue this entire department. I will have your badges." Miller leaned down close to Kyle's ear. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of iron. Kyle Davis, you are under arrest for arson in the first-degree attempted murder and grand larceny. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Attempted murder, Kyle shrieked. He thrashed against the handcuffs, the metal clicking shut with a sound that brought me pure joy. I did not try to kill her. I thought she was out. It was just a fire. It was just business. Miller stood up and signaled the officers to haul him up. You locked a woman inside a burning building to cover up a robbery, Miller said. That is depraved indifference to human life. Take him away. As they dragged Kyle past me, he locked eyes with me. There was no arrogance left, only terror. Nia, he pleaded. Nia, tell them. I can fix this. We can make a deal. I will pay you double. Just tell them it was a prank. Please, Nia. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had called me a dumb cow minutes ago. It is not a prank, Kyle, I said coldly. It is a felony. Enjoy prison. I hear the orange jumpsuits are very slimming. He screamed as they shoved him through the double doors. Miller turned his attention to the rest of the stage. Jasmine was trying to blend into the shadows near the curtains. She was inching toward the emergency exit, her silver dress shimmering like the scales of a snake trying to shed its skin. Jasmine Davis, Miller barked. Do not take another step. Jasmine froze. She turned around slowly, her hands held up in a gesture of surrender. Her face was streaked with mascara tears. I didn't do anything, she wailed. It was all Kyle. He made me do it. I was scared of him. I am a victim here. Miller walked up the steps. He was holding a warrant in his hand. We have you on tape, Jasmine. We have you discussing the theft. We have you wearing the stolen property. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit arson, possession of stolen property, and insurance fraud. An officer stepped forward and spun her around. Jasmine let out a high-pitched shriek as the cold steel of the handcuffs bit into her wrists. No, no, please. I cannot go to jail. I am an influencer. I have a brand. This will ruin my engagement rates. Mom, Dad, help me. I watched my parents. They were standing at the foot of the stage, huddled together like shipwreck survivors. My mother Clara had recovered from her faint, but now she looked like she wished she hadn't. Her face was pale as death. My father Otis was gripping her arm, his knuckles white. They saw the police leading their golden child away. They saw the cameras of their friends pointing at them, and then they saw me. They rushed toward me. They did not run to the police. They ran to the person they thought they could still manipulate. Nia. My mother cried, reaching out to grab my hands. Her grip was clammy. Nia, you have to stop this. You have to tell the officers to let them go. This has gone too far. I pulled my hands away, stepping back as if she were contagious. Gone too far, I repeated. Mom, you gave them the key to my apartment. You let them rob me. You let them burn my home. And when I called you standing on the street with nothing, you told me not to ruin your rug. Clara shook her head frantically. I didn't mean for this to happen. We just wanted to help Kyle. He was in trouble. Family helps family, Nia. You know that. Please just drop the charges. We will pay you back. We will give you the money from the house. Just don't let them take your sister. She is pregnant, Nia. I laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. She is not pregnant, Mom. That was another lie. Just like the investment fund. Just like your love for me. Otis stepped in now, trying to use his commanding father voice. The voice that used to make me cower. Nia, that is enough. Look at this scene. You are embarrassing us. You are destroying this family over money. Is that what you want? To be the girl who sent her own sister to prison? Think about your reputation. Think about us. We are your parents. We raised you. You owe us. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had spent my whole life trying to impress. And I saw nothing. No love, no respect, just a hollow man terrified of losing his status. I do not owe you anything, I said, my voice slicing through the noise of the ballroom. And as for the family, I am not destroying it. I am cleaning it up. I signaled to Miller. He nodded and motioned for 2 more officers to approach. "What is this?" Otis asked, stepping back. "What is going on?" "Mr. and Mrs. Vance," Miller said, stepping off the stage. "You are not just witnesses tonight. You are suspects." "Suspects!" Clara shrieked. "We have a recording of you conspiring to conceal a felony." Miller said, citing the statute. "You knew about the arson and you failed to report it. You actively helped the perpetrators attempt to defraud the victim of her insurance settlement. That makes you accessories after the fact and co-conspirators in the fraud." The officers moved in. One took my father's arm. The other took my mother. "You have the right to remain silent." "No!" Otis roared, trying to pull away. "This is a mistake. I am Otis Vance. I know the mayor. The mayor is gone, Dad," I said, pointing to the empty table where the VIPs had been sitting. "He left 10 minutes ago. He didn't want to be seen with criminals." My mother began to sob uncontrollably. Her knees gave out and the officer had to hold her up. "Nia, please," she begged. "We are your parents. How can you do this?" I walked up to her. I leaned in close so she could see the fire in my eyes. "You made your choice, Mom. You chose the thieves. You chose the lie. Now you have to live in it. Happy anniversary. I hope the prison commissary has Chardonnay?" "Take them away," Miller ordered. As they were led out through the side doors, creating a spectacle that would be the talk of the town for decades, I turned my attention to the final piece of business. Jasmine was still on the stage, being held by an officer. She was weeping, but when she saw me approaching, her eyes narrowed with venom. "I hate you," she hissed. "I have always hated you. You were always jealous of me. You think you won, but you are nothing. You are just a lonely, bitter spinster." I walked up the stairs until I was standing right in front of her. The officer stepped back slightly, giving me space. I looked at her throat. The sapphire necklace was still there. In the chaos of the arrest, she had managed to keep it on, hoping maybe they would forget about it, hoping she could smuggle it out. It was blue and deep and pure. It was the only clean thing on her body. I reached out. Jasmine flinched, thinking I was going to hit her, but I didn't hit her. My hand closed around the pendant. "This does not belong to you," I said softly. I yanked. I didn't unclasp it. I didn't ask nicely. I pulled hard. The delicate chain snapped with a sharp pop. Jasmine gasped, clutching her neck where the chain had dug in. "Ow! That is mine?" she screamed. "No," I said, holding the necklace up to the light. "It was Grandma's. And she left it to the granddaughter who had a spine, not the one who had a shopping addiction." I wrapped the broken chain around my fingers, feeling the cool metal against my skin. It felt like victory. "Besides," I said, leaning in to whisper in her ear, "this really wouldn't match your new outfit. Orange washes you out." Jasmine screamed a primal sound of rage and defeat. The officer grabbed her by the arm and spun her around, marching her toward the exit. I stood alone on the stage, the red dress, the gold heels, the sapphire in my hand. The ballroom was almost empty now. The guests had fled, leaving behind half-eaten cake and shattered glass. The music had stopped. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the few remaining waiters and the distant sirens carrying my family away. Miller walked up to the edge of the stage. He looked tired, but he was smiling. "You okay, kid?" he asked. I looked at the necklace. I looked at the empty room. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. "I am better than okay, Miller," I said. "I am solvent." I walked down the stairs. I did not look back at the screen. I did not look back at the wreckage of the party. I walked out the front doors, into the cool night air. The valet brought my rental car around. He looked terrified of me. I tipped him $100. "Keep the change," I said. I got into the car and placed the sapphire necklace on the passenger seat. It sparkled in the dashboard lights. I was alone. I had no parents. I had no sister. I had no home. But as I drove away toward the airport, leaving the sirens and the scandal in my rearview mirror, I realized something. I had never been richer. It has been 6 months since the anniversary party that ended with handcuffs instead of cake. I am sitting back in my penthouse living room, the same room where I started this story. The view of the city skyline is breathtaking from here, especially at night when the buildings look like pillars of light against the darkness. I am drinking a glass of vintage Cabernet. It is rich and complex, with a finish that lingers just like the satisfaction of justice. The legal system moves slowly for most people. But when you hand the district attorney a silver platter containing high-definition video footage and a confession on audio tape, things tend to speed up. The trial was short. It was brutal. And it was absolute. Kyle tried to plead not guilty. He tried to claim the video was doctored. He tried to claim I hired an actor to impersonate him. It was pathetic, really. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. They came back with a guilty verdict on all counts: arson in the first degree, attempted murder, grand larceny, insurance fraud. The judge was not amused by his arrogance. He sentenced Kyle to 15 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for the first 10. The man who wanted to live in a mansion is now living in a 6x8 cell. Jasmine fared slightly better, but not by much. Her defense attorney tried to paint her as a victim of coercive control, claiming she was just a dutiful wife following her husband's orders. But the audio recording where she worried about the necklace instead of my life told a different story. The judge gave her 3 years for conspiracy and possession of stolen property. She screamed when they took her away. She screamed that she couldn't be in prison because she had a gluten allergy. I did not go to the sentencing. I read about it in the newspaper while drinking my morning coffee. As for my parents, Otis and Clara, they managed to avoid prison time by cutting a deal. They pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of obstruction of justice. They got 5 years of probation. But their punishment was not legal, it was social and financial. The legal fees bankrupted them. To pay for Kyle and Jasmine defense and to pay the restitution ordered by the court for the destruction of my apartment building, they had to sell everything. The house with the manicured lawn is gone. The country club membership is gone. The reputation they spent 40 years polishing is shattered. They live in a 1-bedroom rental now on the other side of town. I hear my mother refuses to leave the apartment because of the shame. They tried to call me once. It was about a month ago. I saw the number pop up on my phone, and for a second I felt that old familiar pull, the instinct to answer, the instinct to fix it. But then I looked at the scar on my arm, a small burn mark from the night of the fire, a permanent reminder of their love. I blocked the number. I did not feel guilty. I felt free. But there is one detail I haven't told anyone yet. One final twist that makes me smile every time I think about it. I reach into my pocket and pull out the sapphire necklace. I hold it up to the city lights, watching the blue stone refract the beams. It is heavy. It is cold. It is magnificent. Jasmine went to prison for this necklace. She conspired to burn down a building for this necklace. She betrayed her own sister for this necklace. She believed it was the family heirloom appraised at $80,000. She believed she was wearing a fortune around her neck that night on the stage. She was wrong. The week before the fire, I had taken the real sapphire necklace to the bank. I had put it in a safety deposit box because I was going on a business trip and didn't want to leave it in the apartment. The necklace that was in my safe the night Kyle broke in was a high-quality replica. I had bought it online for $50 to use as a prop for a theater production I was auditing. I kept it in the safe because it looked pretty, and I hadn't got around to moving it. Kyle stole a $50 piece of costume jewelry. Jasmine wore a $50 piece of costume jewelry to the party. She is sitting in a prison cell right now serving 3 years of her life because she stole a piece of glass and rhodium-plated brass. I never told the police. I never told the prosecutor. I let them believe it was the real thing. Because in the eyes of the law, the intent to steal is what matters. Whether the item is worth $5 or $5 million, if you break into a house to take it, you are a thief. But the irony is delicious. They destroyed their lives for a fake. They chased the appearance of wealth so hard they couldn't tell the difference between treasure and trash. It is a fitting metaphor for our entire relationship. They were always obsessed with how things looked: the perfect house, the perfect photos, the perfect golden child. But underneath it was all cheap metal and glass. There was no substance, there was no value. I take a sip of wine. The liquid is warm in my chest. People ask me if I am lonely. They ask how I can sleep at night knowing my whole family is destroyed. I sleep just fine. I sleep in a bed that I bought with my own money in a home that I own free and clear. I sleep knowing that the people around me are there because they love me, not because they need something from me. I have built a new family. I have friends who showed up for me when I had nothing. I have a partner who holds my hand when I have nightmares about smoke. I have a career that fights for truth. I learned a hard lesson that night in the fire. I learned that blood is not a binding contract. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, especially when they are the ones holding the matches. If you are watching this and you feel like the scapegoat, if you feel like you are the only one carrying the weight of a toxic family, I want you to listen to me. You are not crazy, you are not ungrateful, and you are not alone. You have the power to walk away. You have the power to write a new ending. It might be scary. It might cost you everything you thought you knew, but on the other side of the fire, there is a life that is truly yours. My name is Nia. I am a survivor. I am a truth teller. And this is my legacy. Nia's story reminds us that shared blood is not a license for abuse. For years, she equated love with submission, only to realize that her family viewed her merely as fuel for their own warmth. The fire didn't just take her home. It illuminated the painful truth: you cannot save people who are willing to burn you to save themselves. True wealth isn't just financial freedom, but the courage to cut ties with those who undervalue you. Walking away is not an act of weakness. It is the ultimate act of self-preservation. If this story of justice satisfied your soul, please subscribe and tell us in the comments, have you ever had to fire your own family?